Please take your seats. The meeting is about to begin. Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning and welcome to the July 2nd meeting of the Miami Beach Design Review Board. We have a fairly full docket today, and so I'd like to begin. Rogelio?
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the July 2nd, 2024 DRB. And I will confirm that we have 4 members present: Mr. Sheldon, Mr. Diffenderfer, Chair Giller, and Ms. Meyer. We have 2 members that are absent today, and with that, I'll turn it over to the City Attorney.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Today's meeting of the Design Review Board has been scheduled in a hybrid format, with a quorum of the board physically present at City Hall City Commission chambers, and applicant, staff, and members of the public appearing either in person or virtually via the Zoom platform webinar. In order to participate in today's meeting, those wishing to participate via the Zoom platform webinar may dial 888-475-4499, which is toll-free, and enter the webinar ID, which is 822-7394-1924, or log into the Zoom app and enter the webinar ID, which again is 822-7394-1924. Any individual wishing to speak on an item must click the raise hand icon if they're using the Zoom app, or dial *9 if they're participating by phone. Now, before I swear in those that will be testifying today, I'm going to read into the record the city's notice regarding lobbyist registration. If you are appearing on behalf of a business, a corporation, or another person, you must register as a lobbyist with the city clerk's office. If you haven't registered yet, you should register before you speak to this board. That includes architects, attorneys, or employees representing an applicant or an objector. You do not have to register as a lobbyist in 3 circumstances. 1. If you are speaking only on behalf of yourself and not any other party. 2. If you are testifying as an expert witness, providing only scientific, technical, or other specialized information or testimony in this public meeting. 3. If you are appearing as a representative of a neighborhood association without any compensation or reimbursement for your appearance to express support of or opposition to any item. That said, expert witnesses and representatives of neighborhood associations shall, prior to appearing, disclose in writing to the city clerk their name, address, and the principal on whose behalf they are communicating. These rules apply whether you are appearing in favor of or against an item, or encouraging or arguing against its passage, defeat, modification, or continuance. Now, if you're physically present, I would like for you to stand up and raise your right hand, please, to swear an oath. And virtual speakers will need to be sworn one by one at the time of their testimony. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you will be giving in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. You may sit down. You may proceed. Thank you.
Okay, so we have several items that are on the agenda for a request for continuance. These are on the agenda for request for continuance because they include variances. And we need 5 members to be able to vote on variances. So these were heard last month, and so we're requesting that they be continued to the September 3rd meeting. And we have one additional item. So the ones that are on the agenda, items 2, which is DRB 24-0998, which is 4330 Nautilus Drive. We have DRB 24-1016, which is 976 West 41st Street. 3925 and 3915 Alton Road, DRB 24-1014, which is 4 through 6 Star Island Drive, DRB 24-1015, which is 1801 Alton Road. Those are already on the agenda for request for continuance, and at the request of the applicant, we're going to add one additional item. That's number 7 on the agenda, which is DRB 23-0968. That's the citywide digital information kiosk. The applicant's requesting that that also be continued to the September meeting. So we can have a motion requesting that all of those items be continued to the September 3rd meeting.
Make a motion.
A motion by Mr. Diffenderfer.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sheldon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. And with that, I guess we can proceed. Oh, and we have the after-action item, after-action report, if everyone's okay with that.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Meyer,
Second.
second by Mr. Diffenderfer. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 After-action approved. Okay, so we can move along. We have, our first item will be DRB 23-0956. That's 1901 Alton Road.
The first item on the agenda is DRB 23-0956, 1901 Alton Road, Whole Foods. An application has been filed requesting design review approval for the construction of a new three-story commercial building, including waivers from the long frontage standards and a variance from the maximum width for entrance and exit drives to replace all existing structures on the site. This is continued from April 2nd, 2024 and June 4th, 2024. Only the garage screening was continued. The remainder of the proposal was approved.
Okay, thank you, Giselle. So as stated, this is only being considered for the screening around the garage. The garage is located on the second through the fourth levels of the building, second through third, including a rooftop parking. The board had concerns last time that this item came before the board regarding the landscaping would not be visible or viable given its location. It was located behind the screen. So as a result of that, the applicant went back to the drawing board and redid the plans for the screening. And essentially they reversed it. The landscaping is now at the forefront. The screen is located behind the landscaping. And so this ensures that the landscape is actually visible, that the landscape will actually receive direct sunlight and will be viable, and should address the board's concerns. Overall, we feel that it's an improvement, and staff recommends that it be approved.
Those are the good vibes we like to start with. Graham, Penn, Burke, Howardale, Fernandez, Larkin, Tapenes, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard. I do want to echo that. I think that the changes that you'll see this morning are an improvement to the design, and we appreciate the additional time that the board gave us to revisit it because we think we ended up with a better looking building. For the record, I wanted to note, because we did mention this last time, we have a condition that's in the order that's related to the portion of the screening that's against the New World Symphony properties to our east and our northeast, east. Nothing in the design has changed related to those facades. So we sent that again to Neeson Kasdan, who represents the symphony, just to make sure. I want to clarify that on the record again. There are no revisions to that. The only changes we're making are what you'll see today, which is on the south and on the west side. So with me this morning, our team, the Galwitz, we got Marissa and Russell Galwit, Jennifer McConney, who's going to get up here in a second and take you through the changes. Justine Velez from Urban Robot, our landscape architect, whose landscaping can now be seen without the screen in front of it. So if we could take I'll take you through it. That is the redesign right now, but I'll take you through kind of the reminder slides of where we are. Properties located at the northeast corner of 19th and Alton. It developed with a Wells Fargo for a very long time. We have the condition that was imposed last time was basically that the screening needed to come back. The rest of that condition, as you can see, was what I just mentioned before, related to the New World Symphony. Well, all right, you can get a general idea. I don't know why it's not showing clearly, but that is the ground floor. That is a piece of the second floor, and then we have the roof. So can we reduce the size of it? All right, we'll do it the old-fashioned way. We can see the chrome around it. So this is the plan that we had proposed last time, which was consistent with the 2016 approval. But as Rogelio noted, the board, thanks guys, the board asked us to revisit it to kind of reduce the monumental scale of the facade in relation to the street because of especially with the framing And so that's what Jennifer and her team went back and revisited, and she's ready to take you through the changes right now.
Thank you, Graham. Jennifer McConney. There you go. Jennifer McConney with Studio MCG Architecture. When we went back to study the screen, we did realize that screen and the frames above the second floor were really creating a lot of massing on the building. It was also suffocating the landscape a little bit because the screen was in front of the landscape. So we said, look, let's see if we take it off, what happens? And I think it brought the massing down. It created a much nicer project. We can see Urban Robot's design of the facade and the trees that they've decided to plant. And let's go down. So this is what it looks like now. And we simply just took the frames down. And then we moved the screen in front of the parking. So you have the landscape, you have a 7-foot deep planter, which is very generous. Lots of different landscaping that's different heights, and Justine's gonna talk about that. And then the screen is next to the cars where it should be. This is a view of the previously approved plans along Alton, and this is a view now. So what we did here is the landscaping will be taller. You can see the screen in certain areas, but I think we kind of peeled back the landscaping in this rendering just so you can see what's going on. But that landscape will grow and pretty much cover almost the entire screen. And then this is a view on the corner. We have the really cool bioswale in the front. And then here, this is a view from the corner with the frames off. And then this is a section. So before, there used to be a frame just on the left side of that section that went up 20 feet plus. That comes down, and then you have that 7-foot deep planter all the way around the building. So let me go back to, oh, this is perfect. If you look at this plan, which is the landscape plan, you can see the entire perimeter of this building is planted, heavily planted. So on the back side facing the housing, we have a 10-foot wide setback with a lot of planting that Justine has worked with the landscape architect for the symphony on. And then along Alton Road and 19th, you have this second, not only do you have planting at the ground level, but you also have that 7-foot deep planter. That's the entire length of the perimeter on the street facade, which I think is really generous. And then, that's what we should be looking at, not necessarily the big frames in the screen. And then I wanted to invite Justine up here just to talk about that planning at the second level.
Hi everyone, Justine Velez, Urban Robot Associates, 420 Lincoln Road. It is such a pleasure to be part of this more urbanistically responsible building. We are thrilled that the landscape can finally be revealed. Whereas our intention for the ground floor was to host a lot of native plants, to sort of reimagine a bald cypress bioswale, and we have done so with the ground floor design. The second floor design was really intended to be more like a wallpaper, more like a skin or an architectural skin or a facade. And so the planting we've chosen there is a compilation of large-leaved tropical plants that are really going to create that sort of graphic quality. Sorry, I just realized. So what you can see in our elevations is a sort of repetitive theme of the traveler palms interspersed with the fishtail palms. And at the lower level, we have monstera and other plants that have very large graphic shaped leaves. Very interesting to look at, both from a speeding car driving by and also from within the parking lot itself as you've parked your car, and as a pedestrian as well. And so really that wallpaper effect is creating another architectural facade in its own lush living way. And we're really excited to be here today. Thanks, and I'm here for any questions you may have.
We're going to keep it short and sweet, so that's our presentation. We would ask for your approval subject to staff's adjusted conditions in the order. We're here for any questions you may have, and I'd like to reserve time for rebuttal. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak? Thank you.
Sarah de los Reyes, Sunset Harbor Neighborhood Association. I'm glad that they changed that because we were worried about the lighting kind of flowing into Palau, especially on the east side of Palau. So it looks much, much better. You don't even see that. So we're very happy that that change occurred. I hope you keep the bougainvilleas that are in the back. Well, they belong to the other building. I hope they're there, plus whatever planting you do. But it looks very beautiful. We support it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Anyone online?
No hands are raised online.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to now close the public portion and open it up to the board for discussion. Who would like to start? You know what? I'm going to start because I have a few questions. First of all, so much better. Thank you very much. You know, we can sort of, it's really lovely. You know, that's definitely, I really appreciate removing this sort of superstructure. But I do have a question. You'd mentioned that you're just going to be removing it on two sides, but not on the two sides that face. So what is that going to look like? Are you not having, is there a picture of what those other two sides are going to look like if they don't have? Are you going to leave it like it was, or is there anything there?
We're going to leave it similar to as it was, and it's in the set. We don't have a slide today, but we do have it on sheets A202. So, and we're still working with the neighbors to implement that condition. So we do need to review that backside with the neighbors. But that is a scored stucco that you see along that side. There's no openings because they were concerned with lights coming into their facade. So there's a stucco wall right now facing them with a lot of planting at that setback. And we also lowered it so that wall is only the height of the wall of the parking. It used to go up a little bit higher than that.
And why wasn't that included with this? Why is that being done separately?
Well, I mean, from our point of view, the condition, because it's required for us to work with staff and the neighbor, that's what we anticipated doing between approval and building permit. So it wasn't part of the elements that needed to come back to you. And just to be clear about the condition, right? The condition as drafted, and I can read it, right? It needs to be extended to the maximum permitted by the Florida Building Code, which means reducing the amount of stucco as much as possible. Any remaining stucco shall be evenly distributed, consistent with the mesh design at a greater density. So it's got to be denser than what's going on the remainder of the property. So that is Madam Chair, we didn't consider that we had to make that additional change since we already had the condition for us to do it between approval and permit.
I'm just trying to paint a picture in my head of what this is. In the initial design that you presented us last time, was the superstructure also on those sides? It was never there?
No.
I understand. It just ended before
It was incorporated into the backside, but it was a solid wall.
I see. So no changes have been made?
No.
I see.
And you have to be clear about it. We're not reintroducing the frame.
Right, that's what I was just making sure of, that it wasn't different, the front versus the back. It's all gonna look similar.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then what does that screening behind the plantings look like?
Yeah.
Is it,
Yeah, so it's a simple screen. It's not going to be white, but it's an aluminum, powder coated, probably a gray color.
okay.
Yeah.
And so for the New World, for the buildings, they felt that this type of screening did not provide enough privacy?
Yes, even though we have a solid wall, they wanted a mesh in front of the solid wall. So
'Cause they
we're
didn't want
working
the-
on,
yeah.
what that mesh is and where
Okay.
it goes. So we'll work with them with that. on that.
Okay, I would recommend that with review of staff, but it's certainly, I don't want it to look too awkward that, this is an enormous building. You're gonna see it from all sides. This is very heavily trafficked areas, just to make sure that it looks like it belongs there as opposed to flew there and stuck. Does that make sense? So, and does the privacy as well. any other?
It's gonna work with the landscaping, so things could maybe grow up that mesh and protect them a little bit more on the backside. We're still kind of working through that.
But at the parking level, like, let's call it the upper level, there isn't a width that has planting at it?
No.
No, okay.
There's 10 feet at the ground.
At the ground, you're planting, but then it's just a flat wall going, I'll say flat or flush. It doesn't step back and allow planting at the second level.
No, because there's the ramp is on the
Right,
side.
that's what I thought, okay.
Yeah, and just, not to belabor this, but per our agreement with the Symphony, that is mostly mesh. So it's got to be as much mesh as we can possibly put and tighter for purposes. So the stucco elements that are going to be visible have to be minimized. That's what that condition requires.
Do you have an image of the building without all the landscaping? You know that day one, this is what it'll look like before all the landscaping grows in? On our elevations, it's shown lightly, the landscape. So if you look at 201, I believe.
I'll just interject a quick comment. The landscaping is actually going to go in pretty mature. So, for example, along the eastern facade between us and New World Symphony, the trees are installed at 16 feet height already. And within the second floor parking structure, the facade along Alton Road and on the west side, those plantings will also be installed quite tall. So they'll have a mature look from day one.
Thank you.
So I think it's a great solution. We should have thought of this. Moving the plans in front of the screen is great. I have a concern procedurally. I don't want to hold this up, but I happen to be looking at a couple projects that are currently being built that do not look like the plans that we approved. This is a big example of this is very different. It's not just the screen that's changed, it's the whole top of the building. So here we are like approving the screen, but really the whole building is different. So if you go back and look at what was approved last time, except for the screen, and then you look at this, it's a completely different project. And if somebody is going back to look at this and say, you didn't approve this, you approved that with a different screen, we have an issue. So I'm just, I'm really concerned about things not being built to what was approved. I think this happening, and I'm not positive, I have to go back and research, but I don't want this to be in that gray area as well. So do we have to, when we've approved something that's very different now, how do you approach that the actual design of the building is different than what we approved?
I think overall, the program of the building is the same. The ground floor, as far as I can tell, looks pretty similar.
It's identical.
really the second floor.
The second floor, though,
up.
is,
That is very
if I were the
different.
architect,
Yeah.
and this was my legacy, and you did that to it, I'd be really not happy. So I'm just saying, to protect all of us, this is a very different thing than it was approved last month, or 2 months ago.
I would say any conditions that are related to the screening that affect the screening, you have the ability to adjust those conditions. And so it's up to the board. If the board feels that there's any issues with that, we can adjust conditions and add additional protections to ensure that the architecture is built, that the building is built that way, or if you have
Just to
concerns.
protect everybody, including them, if somebody later comes and says this isn't what was approved, so.
Well, and also one of the ongoing discussions that Scott and I have been having are the placement of mechanical things on the rooftop. And that's one thing that's not very clear here from the drawings. I'm looking both the one from last time seems to show more, but I think that that's something that we really need to be sensitive to, because there have been sort of I'm going to call it egregious uses of rooftop mechanical elements that completely undermine the intent of the design of the building. And I can see how it's easy to come back and, the people that are building and say this is necessary, but I think it also needs to be a necessary process of the design process. It needs to be something that is included in the materials that we get and relevant to our discussion. I don't know what the code says about how those should be screened, how visible or how invisible those are. I could see how in a building like this, it's enormous. So to ensure, as much as possible that all of that is hidden as much as possible from street view, or internally, whatever that is. But, we now have this condition that keeps coming up again and again and again, because of the FAR changes. And so, you know, we just need to be sensitive to that.
Madam Chair?
You know, if you wouldn't mind, I'm curious to hear what the, you know, this is more directed at internally our process, not, and I shouldn't say not just specifically for this building, but in general, all the projects that we're seeing, and how that relates both to our job as well as all the different things. So if you wouldn't mind.
The elevation there doesn't show 4-foot parapet. Increase, do they have any height to get? Could they go higher? Where are we at, 45? The screening. You can go up to 50, right? Huh? So it looks like the screening of the mechanical equipment is the parapet wall, if I'm not mistaken. We could add a condition recommending that the screening, the parapet wall be raised, or some additional conditions to screen that mechanical equipment.
I don't know, do you have any thoughts about, it's hard to even see.
Well, on the roof plan on A105, if I'm reading it correctly, I mean, I think the stair shafts and the elevator shafts, you know, by the way, the nature they're constructed, they're enclosed by walls, and that's what we're seeing on the renderings. But there's not any walls or screening other than sort of the primary facade screening proposed at the mechanical area.
Correct. In the PowerPoint presentation, it seems that there's a parapet wall that's 3 foot 6 inches. So that's the extent of what would be screened from the roof level, from the level 4 of the mechanical area.
Only from the street view, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, I think that there needs to be some intention in the design of, now that we're having these massive mechanical elements on top of the roofs in very visible places, there also needs to be some intention and discussion as to how that is incorporated into the design of the building, what effect that's going to have. I don't know if a 3-foot mesh parapet is going to do anything to screen this massive blocky rooftop mechanical area. But I think that's the effect that we're trying to avoid.
Well, and can I add something to that? I think what everybody really appreciates about this presentation versus the last is, you know, the response to our city and our environment and saying we can have landscape year round, we can have landscape as a part of our material palette in the architecture. And I think maybe what we're asking for now is how does that maybe become more integrated or even set a stronger example of how that landscape is used, you know, instead of building tall walls around mechanical, or, you know, like, can we continue to develop that material palette for the experience all around the building and not just at the street, at the second level? And I mean, I want to state that, you know, I'm conscious of all of those requests having costs, and I think that the a good example, and I know I preface this with I'm sure it's expensive, is the OMA buildings with the landscape by INEA in the Grove, where everything is terraced, but as you move up the buildings, you know, the infrastructure to support the building, to support the landscape, to support drainage, mechanics, it's all sort of integrated into that experience wherever you are around the building. So I guess I'm just putting that on the table as one way. I think this building has the potential to set a precedent that landscape is what's being used as part of the architecture. So how does it really set that precedent?
Yeah, I think in solving one problem, another one has been created. And again, this is not just for this specifically, this is in general in a lot of the projects that we've seen.
Can I explain
Yeah.
the mechanical a little bit? So a lot of there's a lot of refrigeration equipment in this project. It's all located in the mezzanine level. So that's got louvers that's already been approved. So a lot of that mechanical is there at the second floor, hidden and equipment, and as you get towards, as you go away from the edge of the building, you would have the taller equipment that would need a screen. So we would have a screen there, but I'm not expecting that to be more than 5 feet tall. So from the street view, you wouldn't really see it because it's set in, and you have the 42-inch high screen in front of that. So once we figure out what that equipment is, we'll have that layout, but it'll all be set in. We won't have any tall equipment up against the edge of the building.
Well, it's showing here on the A1.05 that the mechanical area is towards the front.
Yes, but we would put the lower equipment towards the front.
Front.
Yeah, and then and that could be a condition. We, have no issue with that, because we don't expect the equipment to be giant. I don't think we're gonna have a cooling tower here. I think it's gonna be something smaller than that.
Well,
Yeah, we've just seen huge cooling towers on not big buildings. We've seen generators that look like 18-wheelers on roofs that are right on the edge. And I just want to make sure, because the building's beautiful now. And it would be a real shame to just have this big, ugly thing in the corner there, which is facing 19th Street. So just if staff can be aware of that. And
I also want to note that the design review board has the discretion of approving a parapet wall up to a maximum of 25 feet above the main roof line. So that is just something to consider.
or I was even going to suggest that when looking, and I don't know what the process is with the architectural drawings, but I do know that, we approve it here, and then a whole other set of working drawings are then created that you guys then have to approve. I would like to see a condition in these, not just it seems to be mostly commercial buildings, but in a lot of the multi-rise structures that we're seeing, that the rooftop, the roof line, and all the mechanicals need to be approved so that there is sufficient screening that integrates well with the rest of the design. And if it seems like, just as an architect would make changes to the design that you feel is a little, changes it and it has to come back to the DRB, that if something is so different than what is approved, like what we've seen on a few buildings around, which essentially look like they have 2 additional stories of these blocky mechanical things, that it come back to us to review. I think for me, that seems to be the only way to ensure, because now, everybody is redoing their floor plans. They're taking advantage of the fact that the roof line is now being overlooked. And it seems like people are just doing whatever they want, and it's really getting in the way of the success of the design. And so there needs to be a little bit of oversight with this situation. So I think that I don't know what the process is of including that, whether it's in your process or in the orders that we do, but I don't think that is an unreasonable request considering what's happening. I'm trying to think of like a reasonable way that this can be, regulated, or that, we can have some sort of involvement in this.
So definitely, if the screening, the mechanical changes the project significantly, it's something we would tell them you're going to need to go back to the board. Otherwise, rework your mechanical equipment, maybe move it more towards the center of the building so it's not visible from the edges. But you're right, that is something that at this phase they're not fully sure what mechanical equipment they're going to need, and they don't know that until they get further along the line in the building permit process. So we can certainly. We'll definitely be more mindful of it moving forward with projects that come back, but for this project, maybe we can include a condition that says the mechanical equipment for the first 5 or 10 feet of the facade cannot exceed 5 feet, and then anything taller has to be recessed 10 feet from the edge of the building. So that way it's
I would
less
say the
visible.
I
depth
don't know
of the
if-
parking.
that can be very difficult, I think, as long as it's covered and staff has involvement in making sure that it's aesthetically cohesive with the rest of it, that's fine. I think people would rather see a wall than mechanical equipment. So I think if you use your discretion, but I hate to put conditions to move things at setbacks, because that could be problematic with parking and elevators and everything else, so.
Right, well, they have an outlined area there, and I think that we could put the condition, like you said, where maybe it's not so prescriptive or definitive, but that the language is about the screening being just augmented of the existing language at the mechanical area. So again, it doesn't feel like an afterthought or something else is introduced, and then the layout, is very, getting higher towards the back. And I think what we could also do is set a precedent, in our future conversations to say like, hey, we want to actually see a street view with a section where if I'm 6 feet tall standing here looking up, and here's the different potential heights, like I know that if you're doing that in a historic district, you have to present those kinds of drawings, even though we don't know what exactly it is, so we can anticipate and we can respond at that level.
I think also the general idea is to encourage our architects and designers to think about these elements holistically as part of the building and not just something, utilitarian to slap on at the end. I think that's what we're going for, because that seems to have been fallen to the wayside. And so whatever gets us to that point where these elements are taken, as part of, and again, this is not specific, this is in general, big picture, everybody that is presenting to the city, just to ensure the quality of architecture from top to bottom.
I agree, and I just want to say that I'm excited to see how this building turns out with the landscape already having sort of the cypress swale in the front. That's something that I think is pretty bold, and it's going to set a language for this. So when you're sort of a trendsetter, I guess we're asking you guys to also think about these other parts. So that comes with it.
All I would say, I apologize, but there is an existing condition, right, which is I, that requires right now, all rooftop fixtures, air conditioning units, and mechanical devices shall be clearly noted on a revised roof plan which is submitted a permit, and shall be screened from view on all sides in a manner to be reviewed and approved by staff, consistent with the design review criteria and directions from the board. I think this board has been very clear in what it needs staff to do in that review. So I think that the concerns that we've heard, obviously we've heard them, and we're going to design to that, and it's already incorporated into your order.
Thank you. I think that I'm glad that you pointed that out, because I think that the issue that the board is having in general, is that condition doesn't seem to be very well executed. Again, not, on some built projects that we've recently seen. So thank you for pointing that out, and hopefully others will take note.
Yes, seriously.
Any other
So,
comments?
so regarding the screening in that condition, should we consider having, or allowing for higher parapets where the mechanical equipment is located? Because that's something that if we do want to do that, we would need authorization from the board to go higher than I believe, what is the plans proposed? It's about 3
Well,
foot 6.
and 25 feet, that
I wouldn't say going
changes.
all the way to 25 feet, but
I mean,
maybe a little more than.
And my concern too is the screening. It's sort of from a distance, I don't want it to look like a chain link fence going
Right.
up 20 feet.
Right.
So I don't know the answer to your, I don't know. Something.
Yeah, I think as long as it's architecturally integrated into the other conditions, that it will be fine. And if it has to go up however many feet, let staff determine that, because I think they get that we don't want to see mechanical equipment from the street.
And I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be this screening. It needs to be something that's not a 20-foot wall on this otherwise beautiful, lovely building. It just, and I have no idea what that is. I feel like I'd love to be able to give the creative team designing the building a little bit of license for, I mean, something, something, some sort of potential to do something interesting.
Well, I don't want to drag this out, but there are already, 3 large, if I'm counting them correctly, large elements at the top of there that again are going to be a shaft. One that sets a precedent for maybe how we do treat the screening of the equipment, which unfortunately is a tall wall. But then now I'm saying you have 4, you have enough of them to be an architectural language. So I guess my question is also, how could we ask them to treat those? Are they just white walls? Are they painted? Is there a texture? Is there something on there that, as those their own objects sort of protrude and come up, which are part of a functioning building and an architectural language, can they appear more intentional than just white walls, if that's what's being planned?
I think also, and I might be, it seems like moving the mechanicals, not considering the mechanicals as part of the rest of the design of the structure, has now created its own issue, because now they're not being treated part of the structure, and yet they're living on top. It has to go somewhere, and so I think that there needs to be some way to reintegrate these elements into the design of the building. That maybe it's not internal, but it needs to become part of the language of the rest of the building. So where does that leave us? What's our next step? I don't know if that's, if this now, from us is we approve this as is, and then with the condition that, and again, not just for you, but for, a blanket, the mechanicals need to be refined in some way, and that can be worked on with staff once you have a better sense of what those mechanical elements, how large they need to be, how tall, et cetera, but I feel like you've gotten, I hope that we've given you some good direction as to what that should, how you should advise or work with them for that. With the condition that if it is significant, to have us come back and take a second look. And I would advise, and this is for everybody, from when you are designing a building, don't have that as an afterthought. And then this will all go so much more smoothly from the beginning, so.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve.
With the condition?
What is the condition that if it's already here? I is already a condition, right?
Perhaps strengthening condition I, that mechanical equipment shall be designed to be integrated and refined into the architectural language of the building.
Yes, I make a motion to approve strengthening I to, go ahead.
I would say to add it to, or I don't know what the language is, but when you're reviewing the working drawings, to review it then, sort of like what you did with the roof of that one house that you weren't sure it was gonna, I'm sure you're gonna pull this off, but some sort of, I think the language needs to be very specific.
Well, I guess a policy question or procedural question. When do you go back and make sure that these existing conditions are met?
It's part of the building permit review process.
Okay.
The plan reviewer that will be reviewing it for compliance with the zoning code will also look at any applicable board orders. So they'll look at this order, they'll look at the planning board order, and make sure, check
So
off that
it's
each thing is
really not
complied with.
even you, it's whoever the plan reviewer is that receives this project.
And for the most part, when they receive something that has the approval of the design review board, they'll come talk to me and make sure, hey, how do you read this condition? How should it be applied in this case? So definitely in this situation, they would come to me to make sure, hey, does this meet the requirement of the board order? So anything that needs to be in there, we need to make sure is in the board order, because that's what they'll be looking at.
So I think a motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I second.
All right, motion by Ms. Meyer, second by Mr. Sheldon. Motion to approve, with strengthening condition, condition I, DI, requiring that mechanical equipment shall be designed and integrated and refined with the architectural language. Any significant, anything that significantly changes the language of the architecture shall be presented to the design review board. Something to that, yeah. I'll refine it a little more as the final condition,
I
but
think, it could,
that's the-
something about working with the existing language shall be screened in a consistent manner.
screen
you
and
know,
consistent,
with the
okay.
existing
That sounds better.
architectural language.
And I would say too, it doesn't even need to be screened if it becomes part of the building
Of the
design.
building, yeah.
It becomes,
Yeah,
you know,
that's a big,
you
we
know,
need to stop screening these and integrating them.
yeah.
Shall be addressed in a consistent manner or integrated in a consistent manner.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I think that's the point, that these need to be integrated.
I like that. We will definitely be mindful of that moving forward with any projects that come to us. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is DRB 24, 1004, 2121 Regatta. Avenue? Yes.
Sure. Next item in the agenda is DRB 24-1004, 2121 Regatta Avenue. An application has been filed requesting design review approval for a two-story residence, including one or more waivers and an understory to replace an existing home. This was continued from the June 4th, 2024 meeting.
Okay, so this item, as stated, was continued from last month at the request of the applicant. There were some inconsistencies with the coloring on their plans. They had a materials board that showed that the facade was going to be a cream color, but the renderings actually showed it more of a brown color, if you happen to look at the plans. That has since been corrected, and the renderings show that the facade will be a cream color, as originally indicated in the materials board. So the proposal here is for a two-story residence on an irregular lot. It's a vacant corner lot on Sunset Island number 4. It's designed in a contemporary style. It's an understory home. So the first fully habitable floor will be located at 17 feet NGVD, and they're having an understory area that will provide some non-air conditioned space that can be used for parking, that will be used for parking, and some additional amenities for the home. The staff does have a concern. The lot, as it's an irregular shaped block, is adjacent to a property that's an irregularly shaped lot. It's a triangular property on the east side of it. It contains a pre-1942 single-story home. So because of that, staff does recommend that there be some enhanced landscaping on that eastern property line. Because that is an irregularly shaped lot, their functional backyard is located on the interior side setback. So they do have a need for some additional privacy given the location of their backyard. So staff does recommend that there be some additional enhanced landscaping in a manner to be reviewed and approved by staff as part of the building permit process. Staff overall is supportive of the design, and staff recommends that the application be approved subject to the conditions in the draft order.
And before we go forward, I'd just like to ask whether you have received any ex parte communications regarding this case and or application from anyone? Okay, yeah. You may proceed. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Jose Sanchez, Director of Praxis Architecture. The owner of the property is available by Zoom if necessary, and also the landscape architect may be available. In this first image of our presentation package, if you can see it there, that's basically the front of the house on 22nd Street, the main image. And it's an understory project with the first level. It's a base or podium for the carports and parking and the terraces. And the first and second level recede into two different volumes, set back with some landscaping for terraced look. Now, this is the area, the vicinity. It's on 22nd and Regatta, very close to Sunset Drive, the main access to the islands, and in close proximity, walking distance to Alton Road and the business district. This is basically one of the first lots, internal lots that you can find in the first island. And there's a mixture of, as in most of these islands in the south of Miami Beach, a mixture of older 1950s and 60s houses and some new construction, especially across the street. get back to the materials and other views, but let's go to the plans to understand the project. This is the site plan that meets all the setbacks, all the different regulations, and as far as the comment for extra landscaping, I would propose that the entire its east side would be provided with landscaping, even if you do not pass through that area, because there are other areas to access, and we can see now in the ground floor. This is the ground floor, and basically what started the project, because my client, the owner, they had approached us for a regular two-story house, but once we did the diagram in this size lot, we realized early on that you could only have a one-car parking garage. It was not possible. There's no parking in the street. So this was the logical direction to go to with an understory house based on the sustainability ordinance. In this ground floor, we could have parking for three automobiles or maybe 4 smaller ones. And there's a large terrace with enough green area around it, much more than if it was a regular two-story house. The first floor it's very simple. It's a small house. It's, I think, less than 4,000 square feet. And it has all the common areas to the rear, one guest bedroom or flex room, and the living room in the front. And it has setbacks or offsets in the front planes in the north and the north, the west, and the south sides. Second floor, it's a very compact circulation, just 3 bedrooms. That's a very simple floor plan, and terraces to the back primarily, and also to the front, another terrace. Equipment is located in the roof towards the center. And these are the elevations that comply with all the regulations. We're not requesting any extra height, just working with the minimum within the range of 24 feet in height. All the other technical drawings and elevations, south and the east, and the sections. Now going back to the materials. This is the front view, and this is on the side. And we are proposing a simulated wood material that the owner selected or preferred for the upper level. So it would be, and that's number 3, as some folded planes with inclined sort of an italic font that is repeated throughout the floors. And it's in this side elevation regatta divided into 3 mainly horizontal volumes and not one vertical volume that expresses the height more. And that's the side view of the house with some of the landscaping that will be located in the street trees approximately, and some of the plants inside of the property. So it's this simulated wood siding material or to be selected, and painted stucco at the base, and that's the color palette and for the project, and that's essentially it. It's a very simple small house that makes the most of this lot. That concludes the presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak? Anyone else online? No?
I don't see any hands raised online.
Okay, great. I'm now going to close the public portion, open it up to the board for discussion. I will quickly say that this is not as simple, this is definitely not as simple, but it's, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. So I feel like this is a very complicated, thoroughly worked design, so don't undersell it. So.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the floor plan is simple, but yes, usually small projects to make them fit, they can be more complicated than larger projects.
Would anybody like to begin? Yeah.
I think, I just want to say that the side and rear views, the angles of the vertical walls, the vertical angles you did are really interesting. One of the best kind of not front views I've seen of a project, so it looked really, really nice. And the color schemes look way better than they were. So thanks for listening to us.
I just have a question. I didn't see a landscape plan. Did I miss that? Or is there, I understand that there, in the renderings, you're showing more landscape on the east.
It was not part of the presentation package, but it's in the main package. I'll try to find it here on the screen. So I have it here at the end.
They did submit a landscape plan. It is on the online agenda. I'm opening it now.
Okay, I'm downloading. I'm gonna look at it. Apologies,
Okay.
I should have already. But my concerns, and this isn't unique to this project, and I want to echo your comments about, I think the design is thoughtful. I think it addresses, you know, the cardinal directions, where you want openings, where you don't want openings, where you want shading. It understands, you know, some of the existing context, and I think that's what we're asking for. I think one of the biggest challenges that everybody is aware of in Miami Beach is, as we develop these sites, how are we addressing grade changes and what's, you know, happening to the adjacent neighbors. And I understand that every applicant tells us that they're responsible to collect all their water by code, but that's not always how the design performs. So, you know, I do see that on your, let me go back to the other presentation.
Yes, in A1.2, you could see the
The
interior side yard
sections and the side
section.
yards, but I'm wondering, and so that led me to try to understand what is being planted in those areas, right? And if it's, you know, like a sod that's not, you know, how are we treating those areas to maybe be the most responsible in terms of, you know, like mini swales and addressing the deluges of water that we get, and just, you know, I get it that we're building a wall and that's going to retain the water, but, you know, how do we preserve the longevity of that wall, and how does landscape be our friend during that process? So.
And handle the overflow of all
Yeah.
of these additional, and it's not just these longer pools and water features now that are dotting the perimeters of homes.
Yes, we have a very hard time trying to fit everything, landscaping, storm drainage. Sometimes the civil engineers, they use swells, but, you know, swell is really a ponding water, and you don't want that near your property. We've been requesting some civil engineers to do deep wells within code, and not too many swells, and that allows more space for the landscaping, or locating the some of the exfiltration trenches, the pipes to store the water under the driveways, but really coordinate with the landscaping. In this case, we would need to raise that yard about 3 feet. It's a code requirement, so we will have a full retaining wall, most likely an Allen block retaining wall, or if needed in concrete. And that takes some space, but the good thing about this site is that on that side yard, that entire yard could be used for planting. You don't need to pass through there because you have access through the other side of the house.
Right, and I'm looking at the landscape plan. So I agree with everything that you're saying. And I understand you're raising the grade and you're building the wall, but then we have areca palms on one side and 2 types of palm on the other, and then sod, you know, everywhere else. So, I guess I'm asking in a way that we are asking for our commercial projects to be sort of responsible urban neighbors, and to think through how the landscape is a material. How do we do that, the same thing when we sort of transform our neighborhoods? I know I'm not a landscape
Yes,
architect,
the-
but
the
I don't know if
landscape-
you guys have.
The landscape architect may not be available because he was on vacation, was gonna try to make it. But I could say that we could propose 2 layers of planting with different heights, perhaps a small tree, and taller palms. So I think the width will not allow more than 2 layers, and to use as much as possible of that side yard.
And I think also, I want to piggyback one of my concerns on it too, and again, maybe this is the code. Overall, the building, in looking at the elevations, not only do you have an understory, but you also have an incline up. So the house seems very tall. Maybe I'm just not, it seems taller than a lot of ones that we've seen. But also, you know, when I was thinking height and visibility, but in the context of Shauna's comment, it's now the water is going to go low. And we did hear from the adjacent neighbor who said she has an older home. And as somebody who has an older home next to newer homes, the water just floods the yard, you know, despite. So I think that, and again, you have all these pools. I think that, you know, Shauna's comment, because it's graded, you have even more ability to flow down. So it just becomes even more of an issue of making sure that the water stays on the property or altering the design, whether it's the design or the landscape, to make sure that you accommodate for that.
Okay, understood, yes.
Yeah.
I think the house looks taller because it's small.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of proportions. And overall, by doing the understory, we end up with more green area because that's part of the trade-off. When the civil engineering is done, there's even a final inspection where the civil engineer has to sign off that everything was done per plans. All the plans are prepared in a way that the water is not supposed to go to the neighbor or to the street, anywhere. In most cases, these retaining walls will require waterproofing to avoid any seepage. But I could say, you know, with so the amount of water that's falling, that it will, the property, if anything, will hold more water than the current situation because it will be raised. So there will be more dirt, and the space in between the dirt absorbs a good portion of the water. And so in any new construction, I can understand the neighbor's concern, but it has to be a better situation than currently is, unless there's a flaw that the water is allowed to travel outside of the lot, but that's, I mean, it's not designed in that way, and it's inspected to make sure that it doesn't happen. If it has happened in any other project, it must have been a construction deviation, but we haven't seen that in most of the projects we have done.
And we're just trying to be thorough. And it's also fresh in our minds what recently happened. Let me ask you a question too. And again, this was something that, you know, witnessing what was happening in our community fairly recently, does the planning department, when they look at designs like this especially, do they then look at what's happening in the street and where the drainages are and all of that? I mean, would you ever request that an applicant or work with the city to add an additional drain outside the home or?
That's really under the purview of the Public Works Department. They definitely do that as part of the site plan review process. They look at the civil engineering and making sure that that they do retain the water on site. I have heard concerns from neighbors that there are some construction flaws and sometimes it doesn't work the way it was designed to work, the way it looks on paper. So that's definitely something we need to improve. But that's definitely part of the permitting process is looking at the water flow and how it's going to make sure that water stays on site.
And go ahead. Well, and again, this concern isn't unique to your project, but especially when we ramp up to the driveway and then we have, you know, the new retaining wall all the way around the house. But like I'm looking at the plan on A1.2, and we have, you know, the metal fence and we have the operable gate, but everything is sloping down towards the street. So how do we collect water there?
Well, there should be a trench drain in the entire width of the driveway, which is directed to the exfiltration trenches. That's something that, I mean, Public Works will not approve it without that. So there are different ways, but when there is the slope is too steep, that's usually the solution. I mean, it's not shown in that section because it's a schematic.
I guess it's I don't know if they're required to submit a grading plan, you know? I know that's typically the civil, but as the architect or the landscape, it's, you know, they're the ones creating that and the civil is engineering it. So it would be great if we're able to ask for that in the future as part of the landscape so that we can really understand. I think this is a thing, again, it's in the code, but I don't think it's integrated in the design process, just like in the commercial buildings, you know, we know that mechanical equipment's gonna be there and we'll get to it. And then in here, even though we've thought about the landscape, that water management is just an afterthought and not integrated. So that would be my request, but.
Yes, the civil engineers, they prepare a set of drawings, about 5 sheets, and there's a percolation test done to test the capacity of the soil to hold the water. Based on that, they do the calculations, and they design exfiltration trenches, pipes that can be 20 inches in diameter.
I'm not concerned about the engineers being able to engineer. I'm concerned about the integration of the design intent with the spaces, the architecture, the landscape, and that aligning with what's been designed by the engineer. Because often, if that's not coordinated well, then that's where the failures occur.
Yeah, yes, we send the civil engineer the landscape plans and vice versa and check on that, but that starts at this point, from this point on. Right now we're at the design stage, but yeah, it's usually done, and it's very hard to coordinate and fit everything, the utilities in tight spaces. But
Okay, was that? Yeah, can you also address, like I said, the design, it seems very tall. And is this part of the updated code that we're seeing? I mean, it's, because we're not used to, or I'm not used to seeing the understory. The understory seems excessively tall and there's a ramp up. And so the overall effect, also the design, it has this pedestal effect because, you know, I think you have some really interesting lines and rhythm and details. But the base, the understory, it really enhances the height as opposed to, and because it's a bit smaller, something taller really stands out more.
So it does take advantage of the extra 3 feet that is provided under the new resiliency code for understory homes. And that the intent of that regulation is to make that understory more usable, because typically applicants were seeking variances for an additional 3 feet. They were typically granted. And so when the code was updated, it was just made to give them that extra 3 feet without having to seek a variance.
I mean, I was surprised. I thought that I understood that the code, and Grant, you know better than I do, that the code was either you have a ramp up and you grade it, or you do an understory. And this, I think, is the first one we've seen that's had both. So, and you're saying
They have to ramp up less in an understory home, so they still have to bring their ground floor to the future grade. And so given that this is Sunset Island number 4, the grade is low right now, and there's plans to raise that grade. So they have to bring it up to what the plans are for that grade. So that's why you may have that discrepancy at this point in time that you may not see on another home that's on the mainland of Miami Beach, for lack of a better word, because the grade is going to be higher to begin with. So that's where you may see that discrepancy on this home.
so we keep being in this position where there's, as we transition, there's awkward transitions.
Yeah, exactly.
The ground floor, the minimum height of the ground floor is dictated by Public Works, depending either on the future crown of road of the street. We are at the minimum right now. And the ground floor height, it's shown in this section at 7 feet 4 inches, which is very low. And I think we can raise it by having some beams exposed, but it will not.
Without the understory.
I've often looked at the designs with the understories or seen homes that have been built with understories, and the understory is very low. And you think, okay, if something's going to, the car that they're parking under there, that's very obviously going to flood.
Gonna flood.
So, but I guess it's just evolving. And I mean, I also think too, there's also a design component. I keep going back and forth with your design because clearly there's a design choice here with these very heavy elements, the verticals. There's a bit of a sort of futuristic, brutalist element to the design, which I think is interesting. And, certainly like those diagonals really do offset it and it gives it an interesting rhythm and a lightness. But this pedestal is very heavy. I also keep thinking about the staircase. That just seems like an enormous amount of stairs, and I guess it's created from this thing. I didn't even look, does the house have an elevator? Or, I mean, I don't mind walking upstairs, but I think that is the exception rather than the rule. And, we're always looking at the sort of livability of these homes.
Yes, there is an elevator, and the number, the stair, I believe we could not do a landing in this stair because of the setbacks or of the constraints. But I don't have it in here in section, but I'm counting perhaps 16 steps. Well, as I mentioned before, the ground floor is not very high, so it will not be a super high stair.
Yeah. And then behind, I'm looking at one of the renderings, in the front elevation, there is the section between the cutout for the carport and the stairs. What sort of material is it? The wall just solid, or is there some sort of material there?
At this moment, it's solid stock, so everything looks monolithic. Perhaps it could be changed to wood.
Something, because again, we're always concerned with the landscaping looks nice when you plant it, and then it's only as good as the person that maintains it, and then you end up, that's a pretty large section of plain white wall. If there could be something there, and also very thoughtful about what gets planted.
Yes, we could add some detail in this case. The upper levels have more articulation, so we wanted to keep the base.
No,
simple.
I understand the reason behind the gesture. Artistically, I think it's a good choice, but practically, that's my only concern. So,
Okay.
I don't know.
all right.
Does anybody have any other comments or thoughts? Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion, or do you have anything else? I'm good. I also have a question too, again, relating to flooding. So we're seeing a lot of these home designs that do have many more water features. Is there any discussion or anything about those, now that there are heavy rains, and I think the heavy rains are going to be regular, doing something, because now we're adding large bodies of water to these properties and managing that?
That's really not something that we've discussed to any significant level. Probably something we should look at. They should be taking that into account in their stormwater plan, making sure when that overflows, it's not a permeable area, so that should be taken into account in their water flows on the site. But maybe that is something that we should look at a little closer to see if it is having a negative impact on the way the water flows during a flood event.
Well, and especially if we're getting these really heavy rains that suddenly are upon us, and everybody has pools, and again, we're high, we're low, the pool's overflowing because somebody can't get out in the rainstorm or even where's the water going to go if you start to drain the pool in the middle of the rainstorm, or they're not home. We have so many people that live in these homes that aren't even here to do it. It just seems like something, and it seems to be this new trend to have lots of water features in the side and backyard that also lets plan for that in some way. So,
Yeah, that's a good idea. We're definitely seeing a lot of homes that have this one, not the standard pool in the rear yard that you're going to be swimming in, but a water feature that runs along the whole side setback. We're seeing a lot more of that. So yeah, that's definitely something we should start looking
it's
at.
a beautiful Miami Beach fantasy. Like I understand why. And again, this isn't specific for you. We're just talking about general precedent, but something to consider as we want to make sure that we're all caught up with both what people want and what Mother Nature is wrought upon us.
Well, and every place that we have that water feature is a place that's not absorbing water,
Right.
you know? And I mean, I know again that there's the code and the amount that we have to have as open space and have to have as permeable and all that, but I guess I'm just asking, how do we augment that as much as possible as we approve these designs?
Because it's one thing to use that integrated as a part of the environmentally friendly landscape design where these are designed to catch rainwater.
Right.
But they're not, they're decorative
Yeah, if it were
features.
designed as a bioswale, it would have a benefit for stormwater.
Right, now they're just pretty, which I understand, but maybe that's something to consider in some way, or it goes to your point about integrating all of the elements of the environment into the average design as a way to be a more sustainable city. I feel like we're on fire today.
Yeah, get great ideas.
Here all day, well, this is just.
Great ideas.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion or any other comments? Do you feel like your concerns have been sufficiently addressed? Sure. Okay.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve DRB 24-1004.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Diffenderfer, second by Mr. Sheldon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 1691 Michigan Avenue, DRB 24-1009.
Next item in the agenda, DRB 24-1009, 1691 Michigan Avenue. An application has been filed requesting designer review approval for exterior design modifications to an existing commercial building. This was continued from the June 4th, 2024 meeting.
Okay, so this is an existing building. The building was originally approved by the Design Review Board in 1999. It's a 6 and 7-story office building and a public parking structure with ground level retail. That design was further updated in 2015 and again in 2016 with some alterations to the facade. The building is known as the Lincoln. The parking garage has 709 spaces, and then it's a 6-story mixed-use office building with 43,000 square feet of ground level retail space and 118,000 square feet of office space. The building fronts 17th Street and goes all the way to Lincoln Lane North. And essentially encompasses most of that block. There is some a residential building on the corner of that block. It is land that is owned by the city. It's part of a public-private partnership with the city. That was done as part of a competitive solicitation process, and they have a ground lease of 50 years with some extensions available. So the applicant, in this case, is proposing an exterior renovation of all the facades of the building. The building programming itself does not change. There's no real interior construction. I'm sure they'll be updating the interior, but really the layout of the building is staying the same. So they're proposing a new skin. The skin will be of a limestone veneer to clad the facades on 17th Street and Michigan Avenue. And then they're going to be adding some horizontal banding that will allow for some contrast. They're going to be providing some slim vertical light sconces integrated between the banding of the facade. The eyebrow details on the corner of the building will be removed, and they'll be replaced with a pattern of alternating awnings and concrete landscape planters. Similar facade treatments will be applied to the garage. The garage will be changed to a warmer color, and they'll also incorporate that veneer cladding, and they're going to be rearranging. The building currently has some concrete planters. They'll be rearranging them to have a more uniform layout of those planters. The applicant did provide these plans last month. They did make some updates to the plans between last month and this month, particularly with the corner features and adding some additional detail to the mechanical screening on in the upper levels of the building. As I understand it, they're going to be proposing some additional updates today.
As representing Black Line Investment Group, as Rogelio mentioned, this property is owned by the city, but our client recently purchased the ground lease for the property, and they're very excited moving towards renovating this building and giving it a big cosmetic upgrade. We'll tell you that this is just the first phase of many cosmetic upgrades that they want to make to the building, but it is, as Rogelio mentioned, a skin of the building, and something that is not changing the height or the floor area of the building, but just bringing it a more modern and a warmer design, and something that the applicant is really, really excited and energized about, and so much so that we can't just get him to stop designing after we submit. So we continued last month to add some changes to the design, and just before this meeting, consistent with you guys' discussion earlier, we want to show you what we actually intend to build, and our client is really excited about this. He's making some tweaks constantly, so what we'll show you today as a minor housekeeping matter is a comparison of what we submitted versus what we're proposing today, and it's just a minor change on the garage, the top level of the garage. We're just bringing down that parapet wall to where it exists currently. And I'll let Jose Gomez, our architect, and I should introduce our team. Jose Gomez, our design architect, Carlos Rodriguez, our designer, and Andrea Munoz, our project manager. And I should also mention that we do have material samples today for the limestone veneer that's going on the building and the garage screening. So we have those here, and we're happy to pass those around if you guys would like to see those. So with that, I'll call up the digital presentation. And Jose, do you want to go through just that initial housekeeping matter as comparing what we submitted as part of our final submittal and what we're proposing for you to consider today?
Good morning. Jose Gomez, Bellis & Gomez Architects, with office at 8101 Biscayne Boulevard. Excuse me, my sore throat. Just wanted to show you the differences between the previous design and the design that we're showing you right now. And all it is that the parapet on the parking garage was designed 1 story higher than what we really wanted to do. Structurally was a concern, so we brought down the parapet, and you can see the new design basically keeps the same spirit of the design. It's just that the parapet was lower. So you see one band along the very top that was removed, and now the design is wrapped by the metal screening. So it's very simple, actually reducing the intensity of the building, making it more like what it is today. I'm the AOR for the project. I'm here to answer any technical questions, or the designer is Carlos, who's here, so I'm just going to be very brief about this. This is not working. There you go. So this is the location of the building. I'm sure we're all very familiar with it. It's been there since 2000. This is part of, this is a building that we've worked on probably during the time of the building 3 times. The Lucky Strikes, I'm sure you all remember, used to be at the bottom, and now we have Williams-Sonoma. We feel that the parking garage and the building are there's a disconnect between the facades of these 2 buildings, and I think that was the primary reason to redesign the skin of the building to tie together that disconnect that you have today with the 2 buildings. This is just a site plan, show you the size of the building is basically a city block. We have, it's bisected by an interior driveway, which comes out on Lincoln Lane. And now we're going to show you, Carlos is going to show you how we're able to make this whole block as one integrated building rather than multiple pieces. And Carlos, can you walk through?
Good morning. My name is Carlos Rodriguez. I'm the principal of Scala Forma Studio. I'm very excited today to present to you our latest design, which we believe is going to help and assist in the pivotal role of the revitalization of Lincoln Road. Our building design blends the timeless charm of Parisian architecture and minimalist nature-inspired ethos of Japanese design, creating a space that's both elegant and serene. The building facade showcases intricate Parisian detailing with beveled stone cladding on the facade and a champagne pattern exterior complemented by floral patterns. That touch of greenery and vibrancy inside adds a softness to the design. We emphasize Japanese simplicity in the clean lines, open spaces, and natural material like wood, stone, creating a tranquil environment. To ensure the building seamlessly integrates into the block, particularly on 17th Street, which is the main approach, we've added planters along the edge to create a buffer, a green buffer. This softens the transition from the street building, enhancing the pedestrian experience. We've also addressed the disconnect between the existing parking structure and the main building by using consistent material design language. We've created a cohesion in this material by connecting and enhancing both aesthetically and functionality. Our project introduces new office design concept, which the owner calls Class X. This typology reimagines office environment, making it more residential, community-oriented, flexible workspaces, communal areas, and holistic amenities, transforming it into a dynamic environment. We believe that this building will set the standard of office design and significantly contribute to the vibrancy of Lincoln Road. So I want to thank you for your support in bringing this vision to potentially life.
Thank you.
So guiding you through the design, as you see here, the building has always had this kind of foreign nature between the parking structure and the front facade. This disconnect allowed the pedestrian level to be a little bit more confusing. It felt very hospital-like in a way. And the irregularity in the planting, one allowed a unsuccessful condition where the plant material never survived. We want to prevent that in creating a more regular approach to the planting beds. The ownership has a $5,000 allowance a month to maintain the florals so that, unlike certain buildings in Miami Beach, suddenly you approve something and then in the interim it changes and the look changes and it's not truly what you approved. We want to make sure that the building has an iconic identity where it feels the same today as you approve it and it feels the same in 10 years. As previously said in this forum, you mentioned the screening of certain areas that are against the facade, which is, as you see here in this condition, this is the staircase shaft, which we wanted it to be, instead of a stucco condition, we wanted to integrate it and bring it part of the fabric. As you see in the frontal part of this rendering, the residential building takes up that kind of sector. So the building allows from every angle to be kind of seen in a special way. And I believe that's it. The materiality, where's the simple? Oh, sorry. So as seen here, you have the champagne color facade, and then you have.
Can you hold it up so we can see it?
Yes, sorry.
Thanks.
You have the limestone with the honeycomb base to prevent weight and for it to be adjusted securely to prevent it from being a projectile on this building structure.
Is that clipping on right over
Yes.
the existing
Correct.
concrete?
Correct. And then you have the meadow condition, which is going to be done in one of these champagne colors. We want it to be a natural finish. We don't want it to be a jarring disconnect where some metallic thing becomes this eyesore. We want it to kind of bleed and create this architectural language between the limestone.
I think that's all we've got, and we're open for questions and board discussion.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak? Anybody available online? No. Okay, I'm now going to close the public portion, open it up to the board for discussion. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I have a few questions. Okay, So you talked about the cohesiveness at the street level. Can you be specific in terms of what you are doing there? Or is it painting, a consistent color? Because I don't believe you're suggesting any modifications to openings, right?
So we are not changing the opening condition. What we are introducing is more plant material. As seen in the rendering, is there a way to?
At the street level
Yes,
specifically?
exactly.
There'll be planters that make
Planters
it
and beds.
continuous, and then how are you treating is every surface, like are the columns getting clad with the?
So as you see here, in this rendering, the cladded material occurs everywhere. As you see let me go back to, the building looks like this. So stucco
Right,
straight
so
through.
the limestone veneer will be
Exactly.
consistent from the corner all the way to
Yes.
the ground floor of the parking
Yes.
garage?
We want to have this almost monumental approach to this building. This building has always been kind of an oddball in a sense, a stucco wonderland. We want to soften that condition. We want, even in the rooftop, you have the mechanical equipment that was hidden behind this ginormous fin. We switched that fin and made it this iconic piece of art within that design.
And what is that fin constructed out of?
That's stucco. It's a large wall.
Oh, okay, well,
And
then
now
tell me how
it
you're
has a metal,
adapting
oh,
it.
sorry. It has a metal cladded finish to create this same, as you see in the proposed light sconces, the lower number 6. It's a triangulated condition that allows light to filter through to create this almost light condition.
So you're removing the horizontal strips that are on it,
Correct.
but are you also introducing a faceted stucco, or are you suggesting just lighting is going to produce that effect on a smooth stucco surface?
Let me explain. The parapet today is a concrete parapet.
Yep.
And it's stucco finish. There's no finish to it. So what we're doing is we're cladding it with a metal material that is pleated as shown, and it's gonna be lit. So
And the
that's a
lights are
cladding on top
faceted
of the
metal
stucco.
material, okay, and that color is?
The champagne color, which is tying
Okay.
with the metal around
And then
the
you're
ground.
gonna uplight it.
Right.
But the screen itself does have some sort of texture
Correct,
to it. It's not-
correct.
Right, that the lights are just going to enhance during the
Correct,
night. But during the day, you're still going to be able to see a texture.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it's not a texture, you're actually faceting the material,
It's-
right?
it's a
Like
metal
it's not
panel on
planar.
top of it. It's a panel on top of it.
It's a folded
that is
metal panel.
corrugated, that has the
You're
pleat.
going to see
Was it corrugated or is it actually a custom
It has
folded?
pleats. It's pleated. It's
Yeah,
basically, you know,
right.
that it's a pleated system. That's all it is.
So during the day, you will see
One,
the
it's-
shadows in between each.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to understand
Yeah.
is what that material is. Corrugated is quite different,
aluminum.
but if it's a folded metal panel, that's a curved surface, so then you get, non-planar surfaces, and
We
so this is proposed, you guys haven't picked a material or manufacturer for that yet.
Correct.
And then that is the only place that particular metal panel appears on both of these projects, right? It's like the accent marker up there.
We want it to be truly about the lighting and the shadow play. As you see, the finish of it is that limestone, kind of to emulate the limestone ivory. We didn't want it to be a jarring condition like that gold finish that the metal clad has. So.
I have more, sorry. And then, sorry, the windows are staying as is, right?
So we are adding a film. Right now, the windows are this sharp blue. We want to soften the blue and make it a little bit more champagne.
And their frames are gonna
And
stay
the frames are
as
going to be
existing?
wrapped as well.
Are they gonna be wrapped
Yeah.
with a dark material?
Yeah, it's going to be the champagne metal. We want the connection between the metal cladding to the metal frames all to be one unison line.
And then can you talk about, I'm looking at your page 12, the treatment at the ground floor. It looks like I don't know if that's applied to the windows or if we're just, it's being illuminated so we're seeing something on the interior, but there's a sort of a vertical metal.
That's just a part of the interiors. That's not considered or an effect that is in the exterior.
Well,
Yeah. I said, in the image, it looks like almost like a black metal fence.
Where?
The bottom corner there and around, it looks like wrapped around the first
Yeah.
floor. That was a question I had as well.
And I guess I want to say, I think in the image, it's working. And when we look at the existing building, you know, all the frames are sort of are white. And I guess my concern is I appreciate the veneer and that color palette and the idea of it being neutral and tying things together, but I would highly discourage champagne frames. Like if you did a dark bronze, if you're wrapping the windows at that street level and at the windows, that's a moment where you can get that bit of contrast. It's still dark, it's a dark neutral, and then you get a little bit of shadow play because you're going to be adding, I don't know if that's an inch of the panel, you know, so you're already getting a little bit more of a jam and depth, but I think and the rendering shows those frames darker, and I think if we were to see them light in here, I don't think we would like it. I think it feels, and then your vertical lights, I guess they don't exist now, right?
No.
You're adding those.
Yeah, we're adding them.
And they look dark, but what color are you proposing them as?
So the rendering, as you see, is in a later time of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that kind of dawn approaching the building. In the different points of the building, you'll see it kind of change. They are a little bit more bronze, the lighting condition. So the decorative lighting becomes an accessory to the building.
And the placement of those, was that just for the rhythm or was there?
Yes.
Okay.
So as you see in the previous slide, how do you go up? Okay. There's this kind of irregularity in the pattern. You see it in these kind of breaks here. Mm-hmm. We saw it as an opportunity for that light play. We didn't want to miss out on that opportunity and just clad it with just a piece of limestone. We thought it was a special moment within the design, a moment for you to have a breather and have lighting change the building from day to night.
I think it's at risk of feeling outdated very quickly in a way that some of the applied architectural features feel outdated to the existing design. But
I thought of you when I looked at that. I was wondering about the intention of the sconces. That's because of what you always bring up. So thank you.
And one last question. I'm sorry, I'm hogging the conversation. The curved, the existing form of the building as it addresses the street corner, number 4, I believe. The fabric awnings. Can you talk to me about that? Then what part is fabric in? And I don't necessarily understand the enhancements that's proposed that's happening there.
So seen here, the building, the original design takes a step back and you have this kind of jarring point. What we're trying to do is soften that condition. So by adding the planting beds, it projects the building forward. We don't want the kind of to create a solution and then create a problem. So the awnings, as seen in,
So you're alternating
yeah.
new planting beds.
Exactly.
There's 3 of them, and then these fabric awnings that negotiate
the condition.
I wonder, again, I think the goal of sort of cohesiveness is a novel or is a great one, and we could definitely use that. I wonder if there's a way, though, to tie the language of what you're trying to do there with the fabric awnings to the same faceted metal that you're proposing as this sort of feature, at the roof.
I think what is successful about that is that it just sort of continues the line, and maybe that's what you're going for. I would be worried. I don't know. I really like this redesign, and I really like what you did with the corner and the fluting. And I think that I didn't even realize that it was canvas, so, or, you know, some sort of awning material, so it could call that. I thought it was just an extent, you know, something built in, extension, whatever the planters were made of, it was the same material. And I think that having that continuous line enhances the effect, because you're really calling attention to this corner, which right now, this building is awkward, but that diagonal, there are some really interesting features that with, I think, your redesign look much better. It's much more successful, but I wonder if your hesitation, but it does make me a little concerned that that material is not a permanent material, that it's this fabric as opposed to stucco or whatever is normally used, just for durability.
So,
And harder to clean, and, you know, I don't know, is that what you're sort of getting at, the
Yeah,
material
I guess,
choice?
yeah, like why not just, I'm assuming it's a cost decision that you didn't just, you know, make those other 3 levels follow the curve out of.
no, it was a design, it wasn't cost. I think that too much is too much, and when you over design a building, it could lose its concept. What we want is that shift in material. We wanted that kind of monumental approach that Parisian architecture has, where you have an awning introducing into a limestone, into a beveling, and then that kind of amalgamation, that union between all those textures creates this beautiful line where it's not just a massive block building. We want to have some romanticism in that corner. So the reason for the awning, it is a Cimbrella fabric. It is a durable material for exterior use. The concept is lost without it being perfect. So there is an allocated sum to make sure that this is kept up, that it is not something that becomes yellow and becomes a eyesore within the corner.
I'm just very concerned with it in that, you know, you have the sun, it's gonna, I know Sunbrella is designed to prevent that, but I understand your concept, and like I said, I agree with the design, but I think the material choice is not practical for the conditions, and I disagree. I think if that was stucco or whatever sort of material it needs to be, I don't think that you would lose that effect. I don't think that every surface needs a decorative element to it. And I think also what's really interesting to me about this corner is, you know, the element on the roof and this diagonal line that's bringing your eye towards it. And so I think if you make it not a canvas material, not Sunbrella, I think it will just be a more successful, sustainable building in the long run without interfering with your vision of the design. Like, I think it's just one small element in a very well-designed whole. So,
through the chair, we would be open to a condition requiring maintenance of those canvas awnings.
you're sold on the canvas, like.
The owner really wants to cut the canvas awnings, and I think it's harkening back to, like, you think of the Betsy Hotel and certain awnings of, like, that iconic awning arrival sequence.
Yeah, but no one's really gonna read it.
And what about just at the ground floor? I mean, it's odd. I do think it's odd. Like, your presentation is all, sorry to cut you off, all about cohesiveness. But then this isn't cohesive when you are alternating these materials. I mean, the way that it's at the ground floor, you know, it seems to have a rhythm that could expand, you know, along the street, but I don't know, I agree. I just think it's another element that needs maintained and feels different and isn't really trying to provide a sort of a sleek new presence on this building.
It's also gonna be very hard to clean on that upper floor.
So we can just do the ground floor awning if that would be preferable, and I think would be looking for a little guidance as to what you guys want to see on the upper levels. Is it?
Well, what material is the ones, the
Yeah, they should
sections
be
that
the
have
same as the other ones.
as the
Materials,
plantings?
what?
With
Excuse
the
me?
balconies, what are the plantings, what are those made of?
That is made out of stucco.
Yeah.
With a Roman clay finish.
I think also there's a certain sleekness to this building, and using the canvas awnings interrupts that.
Okay. Would you have a different approach if it was a metal finish?
No. What is, I mean, it seems like you keep using the word cohesiveness.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't, I agree with that. I think what makes it not, what is different, I think, about this design than the previous,
Yeah.
that sort of overcomes the awkwardness, is that your eye is guided up.
Yeah.
And I think it's also interesting that we started off the whole meeting talking about how can the architecture be used to mask these mechanicals, and this happens to do that. This is a great example of that being done. I think that that's your architectural element, not the horizontal banding, and you don't want to interfere with that. You know, you don't want to interfere with that moment. That it's that giant fin that distinguishes this building. And that if you're paying attention, you notice the offset and the diagonal lines, which is a really nice addition to that. It's not just like they threw something up there and stuck. And so what I'm worried about is if you put too many elements in this one corner, then everything is going to be competing. I'm always looking to, I mean, as a designer, that it's easy to add stuff and it's harder to reduce and to take away, but still keep that essence.
Yeah.
And I think what we're trying to do is make sure that the essence that you're trying to express is expressed in the way. Yeah.
So would a condition that the ground floor awning would remain, but we do planters the remaining way on the corner? Would that satisfy your concern, allow us to move forward?
I would like that as well. Listen, I worked in that building for years, and I really like the update you did to it. And you're so thoughtful with so many things that you talked about. You addressed my biggest concern, which was the planters dying, and so I'm glad you were proactive about that. I feel the same, and I'm the non-architect here, but I feel the same about that corner. It's really kind of the coolest part of the building, and because it's wider on the bottom and narrower at the top, by alternating those things, you're kind of breaking that I don't know, continuity up. And so I feel the same thing. And I also, no matter what people say about maintaining things, they never look right. They never ever do, and it just becomes this big nightmare, and then it looks crappy. It always. So anyway, along the line, I was going to say the planters too. If you had planters on every level, it would kind of enhance the narrowing of that going up. Anyway.
We're open to that.
And I like that there's not planters on every level. I think that's.
I do like the planters.
Oh yeah, I think the more consistent it can be is the better. And like the way that you did continue the parapet, like I think it makes that corner 100% better. But yeah, just letting the awning, and then I would show plantings. I would make every other level the same. Maybe you don't have it at the roof because that feels a little weird. Just let the roof be continuous. I guess I don't understand. Can we talk a little bit about the parking?
Oh, wait. Actually, I also had a similar concern too with the sconces. One of my along it seems like all the facades. And I heard Shauna's little voice in my head of what's the intention with that? Is it just decorative? When you didn't have those, did the building just seem too plain?
No, the building at night becomes a little bit lackluster. It becomes lost.
Not with this.
The lighting condition helps, one, elongate this building and create a even layer as it transitions. We want it to look good during the day as well as the night. So that's why the reasoning was.
I would think about lighting the new corner, again.
The planting bed will have lighting.
Yeah.
So enhancing that and adding planting all the way straight up, you're going to have that even flow of lighting on every planter if we add that.
Well, I'd like to get to the parking garage, but I will also say before I forget, with the materials, I think ultimately I would like, because it seems like your materials aren't exactly perfectly, oftentimes people come and they say, this is the because I like the sample better than the one on the picture that you show, because it's a little bit more geometric and simple. And so I think having the exact one is going to be much more helpful. in envisioning and approving what this is. I mean, I like that one better. The one,
What is the stacked stone panel? On
This
page
is the beveled stone, the sample that you see here.
So right now on page 12, there's the proposed limestone veneer, and on page 13, there's a proposed stacked stone panel.
I think
Is
it's the
they're
verbiage is
both
incorrect.
supposed, well, the
Yeah.
images are quite different too. So they're both going to be the
Oh, sorry.
limestone veneer.
So you see, you can see it around the corner. So the shaft, the elevator shaft, the staircase shaft,
At the base
Yeah.
condition?
we wanted to have that, a treatment to that pedestrian level so that it didn't feel lost. So we added the stack, which is the use of the same material, and introduced it in those awkward corners within the building.
The same material as what? Yeah, it's limestone veneer?
Yes, correct.
And then you'll simply just layer up the panels
Yes.
or at that scale?
Yes.
And it only happens at the base? You don't understand that vertical shaft? Okay.
It only happens at the base of the design, where the building sets in and
Yeah. I guess I had understood in your presentation you wanting to use the metal panel, the perforated metal panel as sort of the beacon of that vertical core? Or did I misunderstand that? Like when we look at page 14, the space joining them, that's not that vertical shaft that we're seeing at the corner, or it is?
that's in the other side of the building. So there's about 4 shafts that are introduced within that rooftop. So, yeah, there's one.
So page 13, when we're looking at that facade, that is not the facade that we're seeing on
Is that
page
alleyway?
14.
of the presentation.
Yeah,
So that's the Jefferson Avenue side that faces on the east side of the building.
okay.
And then this is that's the
That's
Michigan,
Meridian.
that's Michigan Avenue side. So
This
that's
is
the west-
Michigan,
west
this
side of the building.
elevation.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so then is there a moment where that stone that you were just talking about comes down to the ground here? Or do we have images or renderings of
So
here?
that
In the
stone
center.
occurs in these areas where the building sets
center.
back.
Oh, no, you're looking at a different one. Yeah.
If you see the mouse, basically that occurs where the building sets back in that shadow line.
Right there.
Okay, my question about the parking was, and sorry if I missed this, you talked about a budget for the plantings. Was that the only change, or is there some sort of structural change to the planters that is making them function better?
So right now, we're introducing a drip system to the entire planting condition.
Okay.
And also a sleeve and access. What I mean by that is the perforated panel are on hinges, so the planting beds are accessible. Right now, there is that irregularity in the existing pattern that there is no access to some have access or overwatering. We want to make sure that these are accessible to be removed. So it's a sleeve that falls into a metal bed, and it could be removed, fixed, and adjusted and placed back into its spot.
Okay, last question about this. And then there, on the existing planters, there's sort of the gray boxes and then these white elements, you guys are removing those additional horizontal elements?
Yes, to simplify.
Awesome. And then everything is clad in that same limestone veneer?
Yes.
Other than where you're proposing at the ground floor. So then that proposed stacked stone panel at the ground floor of the parking, does that continue to wrap to the corner
Yes.
at the other the Lincoln building?
Yeah, so from the garage to the office, I think is what she
Yes.
said. Yeah.
Yes. It wraps through to where, like, for example, you'll see it here in this condition, you'll see it down here. So basically
It's like a rusticated base.
exactly. So it allows it to be a detail, so it's not like we're just treating the frontal facade of this building and putting lipstick on it. We want it to feel like it's layered.
Let me ask you a question. In what you're showing us now, we have a similar slide, number 11, that does not, on our presentation. No, go back to what you had there, because I wanted to ask you. On the slide that we have, we do not see either of those projections on the very right side, the two projections, or in the middle, the horizontal projection, that. We don't see that in this other presentation, so I wanted to see what.
That's a ramp. So that's the existing condition of the final ramp into the elevator, which is this box here that comes down into this door.
Okay.
So this is the final protrusion of the elevator.
Are you looking at the submitted plans, just so we can?
Yeah, and
Okay,
what
so we're
about?
looking at the other
Yeah.
banding that we.
So you're saying that exists right now?
That exists currently.
Yeah.
So on the right side, though, those two projections at the roof, what are those?
Those are staircases, existing staircases.
And are
Aggressive.
those clad in the same metal that you
Those
have?
are
They
round.
will be clad?
Yes.
Okay.
What are the height of those? Those seem a little bit tall. And I should say, I do like reducing that band, like, I think that was good, but
So
now, yeah.
The angle seems like pedestrian level for the rendering. They are lower. They're not, if we have pictures of the building, you can see they don't protrude as aggressively. So
Are
you
talking
can
about
see,
that? Yeah.
you'll see one here.
Oh, they're right.
Yeah, so see currently, they become this kind of stucco tower. We want to introduce that metal so that it softens the edge.
It's a great solution.
And a consistent datum with the metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not adding any height, you're just cladding
No,
what's
no,
already
yeah.
there. And
No.
it's hard to tell from the photo, but is it angled? No,
So
it's
we are
flat.
removing that angle. There's
Okay.
a current angle to it. We are removing it to bring less focus to that irregularity.
Right. I think on the drawing, the renderings you show us, it seems like it protrudes a lot. I would like to encourage you to have it as low as possible.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and I mean, it does, making it go from floor, to ground to the roof, it does, I think it's a nice element, and again, it's a good solution for a rooftop utility item, so, thank you.
I mean, I overall, I appreciate all the work on this project. I am concerned that there are nuances and details that are not quite right. I'm okay if we want to define those as conditions, if that's the way that you guys want to move forward. But I think that it's in those nuances and details that are going to make this where people say, wow, that's awesome, or wow, they kind of missed the mark here. And, I think that these conversations are about us trying to make things better and stronger, not picking things apart. We're on the same team here. So I guess my primary concerns, I'll just state them, are I want to definitely understand better the approach at the roof parapet. I think it's a great idea as this beacon that, with subtle angles and light is where it is. But even on the plan, you're not showing us that. We don't have heights. I would like to understand that material and the color. I think the color that you put in your presentation is not the right one. I'm concerned about the lights applied to the facade. And then I really feel like that street level, and both the window frames and that second material being introduced, I would like to have a closer rendering or understanding of that. Like, I think I feel pretty strongly about the window frames being darker, and I'm not sold on that introduction of that other material when we don't see the material here, and I'm not sure if it's helping the cause of cohesiveness.
Maybe I'm just not reading the image correctly, because I keep getting focused on the pattern, the sort of angles. I'm looking at page 7 at the bottom floor corner. Is the rendering showing that that's what's inside, that there's this sort of grate thing? Is that in the lobby?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
within the
that's
space.
not.
No,
you're
that's not the
You're not
facade.
changing the windows.
Correct.
Okay, good.
That's not anything that will affect, it might be a shadow line of something that's happening, but it's nothing
gonna
that
be.
we're.
But
Right,
they are
'cause
wrapping the frames.
They're wrapping.
Just exterior, the metal
So like
part
right
of-
now, the metal is,
So if you look at the
it's
existing.
dark in where Pottery Barn is at the garage, and then if you go to the Lincoln, it's all white.
So you see here,
Oh, you're making it the same.
And I think they're proposing to wrap everything in a light champagne, right?
so yes, it's a darker taupe, it's not with, this type of finish, you can't get any metallics because it looks very fake. So the idea is for it to be a little bit more of a darker taupe. So if you see here, this is existing condition, it's a very, very light gray. And I feel with the limestone, it kind of creates a weird monotone box. So there will be a contrast between the two. So if you see here, you can start seeing in this kind of night shot that it is a little bit darker and it continues to the floor. But that metal pattern occurs inside, doesn't occur
Right,
outside.
but when I asked you the color of the frames earlier, you said it was a light champagne.
So if you see here, the bottom base has a darker tone of that taupe, and then it bleeds into this lighter
Sure,
champagne.
it's still a light
Yeah.
neutral though, not a dark
Correct.
color, yeah.
So,
And if we look at the parking garage first floor, are you proposing to wrap those frames in the same? Like, are you making cohesiveness? Because the existing is dark.
Yes,
probably
we are wrapping it. Everything will have one united line. We don't want it to, we don't want to create the same condition that is currently, where it's a garage attached to a building.
I too want to reiterate Shauna's contention too, that one of the things I like about this project is it's, you're reusing and renovating an existing, you're not tearing it down. And I think that, yeah, you have there's little refinements, but overall that I think are gonna make it better. I feel like we are going into a lot of detail, but, and I don't, at least for me, it's not like I don't like it. Like I really, it's, my first impression is like, oh, this is such a fresh update of an awkward building that always seemed to fly there and stuck. But yeah, I think these little refinements are going to be very helpful. And I want you to recognize that we're not,
No, completely. We respond to them
constructive.
very well. I think it's a great comment about the corner condition. I think those are things that are just, the goal is to create a catalyst.
Yeah.
We are not trying to do a building that is completely foreign or stands out for the wrong reason. We believe in Lincoln Road. We believe that of regenerating that area. So any comment like this is greatly exercised into the design.
And I think it also shows that this can be done, that things can be updated. They don't have to be destroyed.
I agree.
And really in the same language, like
Yeah.
you're not, it's still feels very Miami Beach, and I think that's the goal.
And I think that's hard to do, like I think the building is successful in a lot of ways. So where do we want to go?
So just through the chair, I just wanted to point out that there is a condition, condition G, the final details of all proposed storefront system and associated details shall be reviewed and approved by staff consistent with the design review criteria. So I think every single one of those elements is listed on A through J here as the final details to be coordinated. I think we would be open to exploring, perhaps ensure there's contrast or inserting some language so that we can work with staff to get that approved. My client is texting me, he doesn't want something really dark, but he is okay with a contrast. He is opposed to something dark, but I think we can work with staff to come up with something that's a happy medium there.
I think also the concern is just that we don't really know, there's not a final. So we're just sort of speculating here. There's not something that you're presenting us. So that's part of the concern as opposed to this is it.
Right,
So,
like
yeah.
talking about what we approve and what gets built, and if we're looking, yes, at a dusk or dawn rendering and things have contrast, but then it's all a light neutral palette, I don't think that's the right thing. Yeah.
So would you like to make a motion, whether it's continue or work with staff? It's really up to you.
I mean, again, I think it's a great effort, so I don't want to be discouraging, and I want to, be on the same team. So I think, we can make a motion to approve and just put a couple conditions on there. I think that, one condition would be only having the awning at the ground floor, the other upper floors being the same material as shown in the rendering.
If you think that there are enough changes that you'd like to see happen, that you would like to see them come back, that's certainly within our purview.
I'm okay giving the conditions if.
Okay.
But, and then, and again, these are just my conditions, so I don't know if you guys are gonna say you don't want all these. But
On
would-
the awnings on the upper levels, I did hear, I believe the chair say to remove the planter on the roof line. I don't know if that was agreed upon by everybody.
I would vote for that, but
I would say maybe that the corner element be refined and that certain things be explored, including the materials that are being used for those corners in lieu of the canvas, the placement of, are there going to be 3 planters? Are there going to be 5 planters? Is it going to be on the roof? If it's not, I feel like that could be something that maybe could be explored by staff, because when you do it, maybe if you make all of them planters, it doesn't look as good, or you take it away from the roof. I think that all has to be done cohesively. I don't know if we
right,
can
I was
prescribe
gonna say,
it.
as long as we add that word where we're exploring cohesiveness,
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, to explore the elements of the corner, including the material being used for all of, I'm just gonna call them balcony or the corner units, the number and placement of the planters, asking the question of, is the roof line the best use of it or not? And then the colors, what other conditions were there for the corner?
I would include just lighting on that.
The lighting of the planters, or do you mean the sconces along
No,
the
I meant
side?
lighting at the corner, yeah.
Yeah, and certainly finalizing that material. Like, I would have really have liked to seen the material that you're gonna use to reclad that fin. That should be something that staff should review.
It's a stucco, right?
Yes, it's a promine clay, so it has the same texture. We want it to look like the stone, so
But the
ultimately,
stone won't curve like that.
yeah,
So, yeah.
correct. We
Some
don't
sort
want
of
some
sample,
kinda-
right?
Yeah.
Right, some sort of sample that, and I mean, I wanna make sure that it looks beautiful with the lighting in your rendering, and just to make sure that that translates no matter what time of the day. What other, I think maybe exploring, I too am not sold on the sconces, and maybe they're too long, maybe it's, I don't know if the building really needs that, but at least I would say as a condition, something to explore.
I would vote to have a condition to remove them.
Remove the sconces. Why? Because you think it's just intrusive?
I think it's just applied, and it's not, again, it goes against this idea of trying to create an architecture that's cohesive, and, it's just applied. I mean, and on the parking garage, you already have the protrusions of the planters, so I think letting your language be these neutral stone materials with, planters that are the push and pull on the facade. If you looked at the lighting on the way, I think.
So lighting holds a lot of the design. I disagree with it being just applied. We took a lot of kind of direction of what the building, even the garage building, how it is currently, and the introduction of that protrusion of these planters creates this weird shadow pocket within each planter. As you see in the rendering, we're actually introducing that lighting condition as well on the garage. So it nurtures that protrusion, and carrying that over to that corner also creates that regular language. So it becomes almost a pattern or a repetitive condition.
I hate to, I disagree. I agree with you on that. I think the lighting is an important part of it with the garage, and
I think it's successful in the garage, but not so much with the office building.
Okay.
I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I think the cohesiveness of having it in both is
Yeah.
really nice, and I think at night it will show it as one property versus two separate things.
I think shortening them or having a different kind of shape could be something that we could explore.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that could be a good, it just needs to be a little refined, And I think that it works better in the garage because there's a defined space that it seems to be highlighting. Whereas in the office building, you don't really have that. I also wonder too, what this building is it also needs to be embraced. This isn't a Parisian, like this is a very
Completely.
modern, early 2000s modern
Yeah.
American
Yes.
office building
Yes.
in Miami Beach. And so I think that also is part of, when you try to make something what it's not going to succeed. And I wonder if that's I think that the cohesion is really an important goal to have. And honestly, I didn't even realize, I lived here for years and been to this and didn't really associate the two buildings together, didn't know they belonged together at all. So I think it's an interesting idea to want to unify them. But yeah, I certainly think as a condition, which is now 4 paragraphs long,
And maybe
to at
it's-
least explore the dimensions of the sconces, or maybe even
I would again, I think maybe just the overall condition is for staff to review that if cohesiveness is the goal, that they're achieving that. So I would hate to put, like a different shape or length or whatever. But, that's my biggest condition on the approval is you are talking about cohesiveness, but there's 15 different elements here. So are we achieving it?
I generally hate to slow things down, but I think given the length of the concerns that you have, it may be best to continue to September, and maybe we work with the applicant to refine pursuant to your concerns in your direction. I would hate to leave all this discretion up to our permit review staff. It's gonna be a lot for us to figure out as part of a building permit process when we have a very limited time to review and determine if these conditions are complied with, especially if they're not very precise.
Okay. Okay. So, but Shauna has made a motion. Do we have to, what's the procedure now?
Withdraw.
Do you just want to, do you agree? Do you want it to continue?
So I would, the motion should give direction to the applicant on what the board would like to see, and then to continue to the September 3rd meeting. If you're not, are you okay with revising plans in advance of the September 3rd meeting?
When would our deadline be for resubmittal?
Typically, we would like to see them 2 to 3 weeks prior to that meeting. So that would be August,
That's fine, we'll make it happen.
mid-August.
That's fine, as long as it's not like next week.
Yeah, no, mid-August. We don't have, unfortunately, we don't have a July meeting.
I would support a
Are we?
In August, maybe we don't know.
No August. If you want to meet in August, we might.
Okay, so Shauna, are you going to withdraw?
So
I
can
would
we
be in
take-
support of a continuance. Do you
Okay,
wanna
sure. I withdraw my motion to approve. I propose we continue this with the condition that you guys update the corner per we already previous stated. I'd like to, when you come back, I would like to see the actual material samples for the parapet, and some drawings of what that is. I think as you explore that, it may be metal, it may be stucco, like I think the design you're proposing is great, but how the execution is, I think, gonna be important. And then the actual, material, the color of the material wrap at the windows.
Do we have a second? Are there any other conditions? No.
So just so it's the color of the storefront wrapping for the metal, the corner, changing the corner to remove the awnings and the planters, The light sconces, we'll explore some different solutions there, and bring material samples for the metal corner feature.
And like detail, like have more details, drawings, understanding how you're gonna execute the parapet.
How we're gonna actually build it and attach
Yeah.
it to the, okay.
And the samples, I think that
Yeah.
would help, of exactly, this is the color we propose, and this is how it's gonna look, and this is how it's gonna change, or whatever, the more specific. Okay, I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by
you
Ms.
second?
Meyer
Yeah.
to continue to September 3rd. We have a second by Ms. Giller Nelson. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see,
Some work to do.
yeah.
If you'd like to meet with us, we're happy to schedule meetings with you so you can bounce ideas off of us and move along that way.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll be doing that. Thank you.
Board members, lunch is here if you want to grab your lunch, if you want to eat now, if you want to wait till a little bit later. It is a little bit early, but it's up to you.
I feel like the next one might be pretty straightforward.
Should be.
So maybe let's take maybe a 5-minute
Okay.
restroom break, and then do one more, and then have lunch. Is that okay, or are you starving?
It's not that I'm starving, but
It's only
my
11:30.
my food is hot. I ordered hot food.
Oh. Okay, then I guess we can, 1, 2, 3. We have 5 more to come back to.
5 more, yes.
Okay. I mean, I'd sort of rather get through this one thing quickly, and then our nice people from Public Works don't have to
Madam Chair,
sit
you-
here.
up to you.
But it doesn't really. Okay, well, maybe maybe if we could hear the next one.
Okay.
And then take a break, because I don't think it's gonna take so long.
Okay. Let's do it. DRB 24-1012.
Okay, the next item in the agenda is DRB 24-1012, 1291 West 23rd Street right-of-way, stormwater pump station 24, water quality upgrade. An application has been filed, design review approval of an advisory basis for a pump station related equipment. The project includes the construction of electrical equipment, wells, and other related equipment. The equipment will be located on the West 23rd Street right-of-way to the west of North Bay Road.
Okay, so this project involves the installation of equipment that will improve the water quality of the existing stormwater pump station number 24. So this pump station's already there, it's functioning. This adds a few other elements to that pumping system. As Giselle stated, located on the West 23rd Street right-of-way. Some of the equipment will be located within the mini dog park that's located at the street end. And so this includes the construction of 2 stormwater wells within the boundaries of that dog park. That will be primarily below grade. Most of it will not be visible. There will be new electrical equipment over an existing asphalt parking space surrounded by decorative concrete bollards. And there's also landscape hedge around that electrical equipment. Replacement of the mini dog park fence to provide picket fence with sliding gates so that will allow improved access to the equipment and the underground infrastructure. And so this is net tax on the surrounding community. Most of the equipment for this stormwater pump is already there, so this is just a few extra things. And staff overall feels that this will benefit the community by improving the water quality in Biscayne Bay. So with that, staff recommends that the DRB discuss the proposal and provide any recommendations to the City Commission. This is an advisory review, and the recommendations of the board will be transmitted to the City Commission via a letter to commission, an LTC.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Good morning. Chair and Vice Chair and board members, my name is Giancarlo Peña. I'm the Assistant City Engineer, Public Works. And here today we have a consultant, Nova Consulting, which is going to be doing a presentation, going through all the details and making sure you guys have any questions we can answer. So, Brian, if you can.
Thank you. Thank you, Giancarlo. Also with me, so my name is Brian Moreno. I am with Nova Consulting. We are the civil engineering firm working with the City of Miami Beach Public Works Department. We also have Stephen Eagle, who is the engineer of record. He's connected through Zoom in case you guys may have some more technical questions to be answered. So as mentioned, this is a pump station improvement project. This is going to be for stormwater. There is an existing pump station in that area, and we are going to be improving the water quality that gets discharged into the Biscayne Bay. So a quick outline. I know we are trying to make it through lunch, so I'll go briefly through the scope of work, talk about the existing conditions, and then go into some of the project specifics and highlight the demolition, some of the site constraints, and then some of the proposed improvements and the final restoration of the work. As mentioned in the brief introduction, this is an enhancement to the existing infrastructure that is capturing the stormwater along Lower North Bay Road between Chase Avenue and West 20th Street. This new pump station is going to be capturing what we call the first flush, which is essentially the first inch to 2.5 inches of rain. That's what carries the most contaminants in a rainfall event. So the idea is that we will be diverting that first flush of rainfall into the new pump station, and then that rainfall is going to be discharged into 2 new wells, and then any additional rainfall will then be discharged. That's the cleaner rainfall will be discharged into the Biscayne Bay. That's the improvement to the water quality. That's the project in a nutshell. Important thing to note is that this project is part of an active settle agreement with the FDEP as part of our ongoing efforts to improve our waterways. And so let's just jump right into it. So as mentioned, there's an existing pump station within the right-of-way at the intersection of West 23rd Street and North Bay Road. It's highlighted here in the little blue box. You can see some of the concrete slabs. Again, most of these infrastructure is below grade. The only thing you guys will see and the residents will see are access hatches and potentially concrete slabs and the electrical equipment that's usually elevated to meet sea level rise requirements. Highlighted here in this yellow box, this is the dog park, and this is where the proposed improvements are going to be. I'm going to run you through some of the existing conditions here. Again, just highlighting where everything is at. In this area, we do have, again, most of these are below grade structures. There's a trash rack, wet well, dissipator box, outfall, and then we do have some elevated structures, as I mentioned, the electrical equipment and its slab, an existing fence, and then some vortex structures which are below grade. And then just kind of walking you through what you see as you approach the site. This is from the intersection of Lower North Bay Road and West 23rd Street. This is now looking west. You can see that most of the infrastructure here is below grade. The infrastructure that you do see on the left-hand side here, these are communications. This isn't related to the stormwater improvements in this area. Moving more towards the dog park, you can see here, these are some of the access hatches to these vortex structures that we were referencing. We do have a water infrastructure here. This is a hose bib just for maintenance purposes in case we need to clean the pumps or we need access for water during the site. And then again, you do have these electrical equipment, which is not related to this project. These are Comcast, Verizon, your fiber optics, etc. As we move more closer to the dog park, we do have a resident who does have they're facing their driveway into their garage in that area. You can see that they do have landscaping on the west-hand side of this area. And then on photo here, number 5, there is this space between that residency and the dog park. There's this green area. It does have a small patch of asphalt. And this is the area that we're looking to as we get into some of the proposed improvements, where we're going to tuck away the electrical slab. You can see there's a lot of landscaping there. We're also going to provide some additional landscaping so that hopefully the electrical slab will be surrounded by hedges on all 3 sides, and then kind of, again, tuck it away from the side of the residents and the users of the dog park. This is what the dog park looks like. There are some features here that I just would like to call out. This existing tree will need to be relocated just north of the site. It's going to remain on site, but in its area right now, there is a conflict with the proposed improvements, as well as this existing fountain. It's also going to be relocated in this sense to the north, which on the presentation would be to the right-hand side. Now we are looking towards the south. Again, the homeowner next to the dog park has a side access yard, and they have a gate with a sidewalk that leads to West 23rd Street. And then this photo here, number 7, this shows what the existing pump station looks like. It's this very large concrete slab. The proposed pump station will be smaller. The slab isn't going to be as large, but you can get an idea of the hedges that will be installed on the electrical slab side to kind of mask the electrical equipment here. So in plan view, these are all the items that we're talking about that are going to require either relocation and or demolition. There I mentioned that existing tree, I mentioned that existing water fountain, there is a park sign that's going to have to be relocated as well. And then the existing steel fence will be demolished and a new steel fence will be placed in that area as well. There's also going to be some minor demolition to some of the hedges, sidewalk, and signage that's in that area. And all of that looks like is here and highlighted to kind of give a visual representation of what we're working with. As I mentioned, these are the concrete bollards. There's some signage, some small hedges here that will be removed. That's going to be removed to grant the city access to the pump station during their operation and maintenance. You know, they periodically clean the pumps monthly and quarterly. So there will be a 12-foot access driveway into the park so that they can park the truck next to the pump station, use a boom, lift the pumps, do what they need to do, and then, you know, go on their way. And then, as I mentioned, this is the existing access gate here. So at the moment, let's say that they needed to access the structure in the park, this is what they would use to open and put the truck in, and that's going to be relocated to this E and F area, as we'll see. And as I mentioned, this is the green space that is now between the residents and the dog park, and it's kind of used as parking. There is this little asphalt patch there, and this is going to be reworked for the elevated equipment, the elevated electrical equipment for the pump station here. And this existing access to the park is going to be removed from the north side to the south side. So that way the infrastructure is on one side, access to the dog park will be on the south side. And again, trying to keep our eyes away from the proposed elevated electrical equipment here. So some of the site constraints, we did try to see how we can tuck all of these improvements away from the eyesight while maintaining visual to the waterway in the area, and not try to impede that visual to the Biscayne Bay. But unfortunately, to the north, we have an existing gas main. There is an existing stormwater pipe and outfall that essentially runs on the middle half of the park. And then on the south side, we have all of the stormwater pipes that are associated with the existing pump station. So essentially, we had two areas that we can work with, either the northern half between the gas main and this existing stormwater discharge, or between the two discharge stormwater pipe locations. And we chose the second half, again, trying to stay away from the gas main. There is a utility easement there. God forbid the contractor, for whatever reason, has an accident, because again, this is going to require significant excavation during construction. So the footprint, we just weren't comfortable to place it on the northern half, since that's why we chose this bottom half for its installation. And so here are the proposed improvements that we will be placing. It's going to be a total of 5 structures. One of them is going to be the manhole, which we show here as number 1. Number 2 is the wet well and valve vault. This is the meat and potatoes of the pump station. Again, all of this is below grade. What's going to be seen is just the access hatch on a concrete slab. Number 3 is the injection wells. Again, an access hatch and a concrete slab is what's going to be visible. Number 4 is the big ticket item, I would say, which is the raised electrical slab to meet that sea level rise requirement. And then number 5 is that new park fencing that's going to house the sliding gate for operation and maintenance to access the pump station, and then a new swing gate for the residents to use and access the dog park. What that looks like in plan.
Can you go back? What's number 2? That's in the center of the park.
That's the wet well. So that's the combination of, that's the pump station, which is a 2-part component, a wet well and a valve vault. The wet well is basically where we collect all of the stormwater that houses the pumps, and then what we call the valve vault is all of the mechanical equipment to and piping to distribute the pipes.
And that's above ground or
That's below grade.
Okay.
The only thing that's visible is an access hatch and a concrete slab. Yeah, and yeah.
Everything within the park will be flush, so you won't see anything above ground. And to mention about number 3, which are the injection wells, you may ask why you wouldn't put it together to save space. The issue is that they need to be separate so they could work correctly. So that's why they have a required separation to make sure that they're effective and they can treat the water. So that's the minimum we can separate.
Yes. So what that looks like in plan, again, the majority of these features, 1, 2, and 3, these are below grade. What you'll be seeing is a flush concrete slab and access hatch. 4 and 5 are the above grade structures, I would say. 4 being the electrical equipment and 5 being the new fence that we will be replacing here. So in terms of the electrical equipment, this is all based off sea level rise requirement and meeting everything that the regulatory agencies require us to do. So here we're just showing a brief example of the calculations, the base flood elevation, the freeboard that needs to be met, the sea level rise requirement that needs to be met, essentially puts us at a +9 elevation requirement for the electrical equipment. We did use submersible hatches, which allowed us to create a lower foot needed. Had we not used that, we would be looking at +11. So the submersible control panel does allow us to reduce that profile for the electrical equipment, and this is the best that we can have to offer while meeting the other requirements, because in addition to the electrical control panel, there's things like FPL meters and things like that that also need to meet the sea level rise requirement as well. And in terms of the proposed fence, it should just be almost a one-to-one replacement. The only items that we're going to be adding is there will be a rolling gate, again, to provide access for the city trucks to get into and operate and maintain the pumps. And then we'll be having the 4-foot swing gate rather than having it on the northern side of the property of the dog park. It'll now be on the southern side of the property. Restoration, here's kind of what everything looks like in a nutshell. The entire park will be resodded. We will be milling and resurfacing the street. Of course, any excavation that we need to do will be brand new asphalt in terms of its base and sub-base and all that. And of course, curb and gutter that gets damaged will also be replaced in here as well. And here on this area here, this is where we can see the electrical slab and equipment that's going to be elevated. And you can see that the proposed hedges would be on the south side. We do have existing hedges on the east side, and the northern side is already vegetated. And the homeowner already has a 6-foot concrete wall in that area. So that kind of gives us, again, that access, that coverage of the electrical equipment. So that is our presentation. Don't know if you guys have any questions for us. We'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public wishing to speak?
We have no hands raised online.
Okay, great. I'm now going to close the public portion, open it up to the board for comments.
I have a couple questions. So where you're proposing the raised electrical slab, there's already asphalt slab there, right? And that's already your property? Okay. And then did you say this is a dog park?
It's a small dog park, yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering,
Yes.
like, I know what dogs do at Dogs Park, and if there's any issue about, you know, like peeing all over the access stuff or.
No.
Okay.
No.
And last question is, what is the city's current standards or protocol in terms of screening any of these, you know, above grade? I mean, as we continue to build the infrastructure, there's going to be more and more of it around. So like this electrical pad that's up and then has, you know, the panels and whatnot. Is there any screening?
The city, as we've done all the projects in the past, we have implemented hedges. That's the fastest and it's worked the best, I think, in our opinion, in terms of maintenance as well. It keeps, you know, our maintenance to a lower cost. So, and the public has received that as a good. I think they as long as, you know, it covers well the electrical equipment. Not only that, we have pump stations as well that we're trying to put, you know, hedges and trying to cover it so people can, you know, can be concealed.
And how is that, because as I drive around, and I know I've heard complaints from other of my neighbors of the equipment that's not necessarily hedged, is there sort of a minimum size, or how do you ensure, because when there is a hedge, it does do a nice job of blocking it, and that was one of my questions too. I just wanted to make sure that this equipment that you're installing is well hedged, and then also to make sure that any sort of above ground pumping that you install, is there like I know there was something that was just installed by the Normandy Fountain that just sort of blocks the fountain. So I just want to make sure that everything is hedged.
Yes, moving forward, yes, that's the direction we have, is moving forward. Any project that's moving forward now that's going to planning design, we're making sure that there's some kind of, you know, component as part of landscape architect involved in the projects, that we can have some screening as, you know, screening as landscaping, or it may be some panels, as you can see in Sunset Harbor, there was some panels design and architectural like.
And if somebody, if a resident wants to make that happen, or who would they call? Who would handle that?
Public Works, he needs to contact us, and we'll see what is the situation and see what kind of, equipment is, or that is in, as long as it's in the right of way, as maintained by Public Works, is a pump station, or, that's something that we'll look and we could.
So to call
analyze
and say, I'd like to talk to somebody in Public Works who's maintaining, because I know Public Works is a very large department.
Yes.
Is there a sub-department within it, or just?
Public Works engineers, Giancarlo Peña, assistant city engineer, or if it's with operations, I'll transfer to operations, or we could find someone that could address the situation.
Okay, thank you. And then, so you're gonna be replacing the entire fence or just a section of the fence?
The entire fence is
entire
gonna be
fence.
new, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a general comment about the park portion. I appreciate that you designed it with the, to maintain the views, because this is a pretty view, and it really is, one of the few places where any sort of resident visitor can see, the canals and the bay on North Bay Road. One of the things that I live in this general area, and it's very hard to tell right now based on the fence and the signage and the bollards and all that this is actually a public space. And one of the things that I wanted to see, if you're going to redo the fence anyway, is to make the fence lower and to make sure that the signage reflects that this is a public park. I was also hoping, I think the park would be greatly improved by adding a bench close to the seawall. So I was glad that this came before us, and if you're doing that sort of thing, please make it a little bit more welcoming. I think not having the bollards there is going to make it seem a little bit more welcoming, but these are public spaces that should be used by the public, and it's and that was definitely something that I wanted you to be aware of, and that when our comments are transferred over to the commission, that they are aware of as well. So I wanted to go on record to say that, to
And it
think
could
about
feel a
it.
little bit more park-like.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, building on to that, I also was asking if it's a dog park, because is sod, sod doesn't always work well in dog parks. I understand everybody has a budget, but, if there's a way to think about, okay, how do we make it function better as a park as part of these also infrastructural upgrades, is sod the right material choice? Couldn't agree more with the bench. Maybe even a sign that it has a name of it. I know there's a lot of these sort of pocket park throughout Miami Beach, and then the adjacent owners sort of take ownership, which isn't your guys' fault in any way. But my one other comment was just going to be about the hedges, is that on your plan on page, 19, it looks like there's a way to turn in and, maybe a service vehicle park next to that raised platform and then access it from the stairs that face north. Would you ever plant hedges as well along the west side there, so that if you are in the park, you're looking back at the
We can
hedges?
definitely look at that, yes. We can look at providing hedges look into the water to the west.
I don't know if it
So
disrupts
the
access
one
or
requirement
function.
from operation and maintenance, typically when you're using the control panel, you want to turn on and off the pumps. And so you typically want to have a clear line of sight. But we can take a look at potentially, kind of closing and bringing maybe one or two shrubs, maybe not a whole row of 4, to kind of maintain that line of sight.
And we also have the stair to access the platform on that side. So it couldn't, if it's gonna be installed hedges or landscaping, it could be in a small portion of that length of the side of the platform, so.
We'll look at it, yeah, we'll look at it
Well,
to
we'll
make sure that we
definitely look at
maintain line of sight for our operation, because they need to make sure that they looking to who are working on the pump station, and then they turn it off and on is a safety concern, so we'll look at, and we'll maximize our use of hedges around the control panel.
And I think we live in a very unique community, and that, we need these, the water management issues, but we also happen to have residents and visitors that, also demand a really beautiful environment. And so it's, the mixture of form and function. So appreciate any work you can do on both sides of that equation. So, any other comments? No? And this is just, again, a recommendation that you're then going to pass on that we're giving right now. Okay. So I think, are you clear then in what our questions and concerns were and what's going to be passed on? Okay, thank you. Yeah, give us our park back. Thank you. Does anybody want to make a motion, or is this a motionable action? Okay.
Yes, there should be a motion making a recommendation that the city commission consider the following. So my notes: lower fence to make more welcoming, improve signage to identify spaces of park, add a bench adjacent to the water, add a hedge on the west side of the electrical equipment to screen views from the park to the extent possible.
Okay, I make a motion subject to those conditions.
I second.
Who gets it? Mr. Diffenderfer. Second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Now I think we should take a lunch break. Yeah, 20 minutes. So let's be back. It's 11:50. Maybe let's be back at 12:15.
Okay.